Welcome back, and thank you all for being so prompt. Our next presentation is going to be by Naomi Miller, speaking on LEDs in museums. Naomi Miller has landed at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory as a designer and scientist in the SSL program after 10 years at Naomi Miller Lighting Design in Troy, New York. Working to bridge the gap between technology and application, she is promoting the wise use of LEDs and working with industry to overcome the hurdles and celebrate the opportunities. She has too many years of experience working in different facets of the lighting industry, but still finds lighting to be an intriguing melange of economics, human factors, and physics, an essential element of productivity and comfort, and of visual delight. She is a fellow of the IESNA and fellow of the IALD. Please welcome Naomi Miller.
Thank you, Tiarna. I will reassure most of you in the audience that I am not going to show a single electromagnetic spectrum. I'm really pleased to be here today. It's fun to have an audience full of a mix of people. You know, it's not all lighting nerds out there in the audience. And hopefully some of you are facility managers, and you'll understand that I'm speaking hopefully from the perspective of the facility manager, who in an art museum needs to keep all of these goals in mind. Obviously, preserving art for future generations, managing the costs of lighting and controls, maintenance issues, electrical energy savings. You have to make sure that the security cameras and the security staff can see the artwork and people milling around the museum. You need to get good press for your museum. You need to make sure that you take care of traveling exhibits so that you continue to get traveling exhibits. In fact, I was at the King Tut exhibit in Seattle recently, and I said, "Where's the famous headdress?" And the answer was, well, the last time it visited America, it got dropped. So guess what? It doesn't leave Egypt anymore. So that you don't want to drop stuff. And you want to make sure that the visitors and the critics and the donors are impressed with your museum so that you continue to have visitors and funding. So very important stuff. So how can LEDs help? These are mostly issues. Long lamp life. And if you have long lamp life, then you have fewer ladders and lifts around that can knock into things and knock headdresses off. You can also reduce your electric bills. You can lower your HVAC bills because you're not contributing as much wattage, red heat, to the space. And that's especially important in places where you have cool climates, warm climates. And frankly, in the US, certainly, there is a greater air conditioning load in most museums than heating loads. You want to make sure that the LEDs don't change any security observation, and so far the LEDs do not. The nice thing about LEDs is they're easily controlled by occupancy sensors, unlike, for example, metal halide, where if you switch it off, it takes 10 minutes to come back to full output, and it goes through some pretty weird color changes in the process. So the nice thing about LEDs is you can switch them on and off or dim them down to a low level when no one's around, and then quickly bring them back to full blast again when needed. And of course, we know from Scott's presentation that they can work very well to support the visual needs of the visitor and the curators. The Department of Energy has sponsored Pacific Northwest National Lab, where I live. Sometimes it feels that way, where I work, and I'm one of the people who works on these demonstration projects. We have 5 demonstration projects in museums. Is that because we're here to support the museum industry? Not exclusively, but museums have higher standards than a lot of other installations. So we know that if we can get LEDs into museum applications and make them work there, that is going to teach a lot of other people that LEDs have a lot of potential. So that's why museums are one of the focus applications. Here are the 5 listed. 4 of the 5 have been completed, and the last one, which is going to be focusing on the interaction between LEDs and control systems and how to design those together, is in the hopper right now. So the first one was the Brooker Gallery at the Field Museum in Chicago. It was an exhibit of architectural illustrations and models. And it was a change out of originally these were PAR 38 halogen fixtures and MR16 fixtures, and they were replaced with a dedicated LED product using the Ziccato module that Scott mentioned earlier. And it worked very well. And here's a very summary of the energy savings here. Looking at the original halogen installation was 894 watts. The LED installation came out at 335 watts. That is a 63% reduction in energy. I want to show you the, oh darn it. I lied. Okay, Joe, sorry. I was hoping they'd get a break from Spectra, but no. Okay, here's the Ziccato lamp, and those of you who speak in nanometers will recognize that this is actually very similar to the spectrum of a filtered halogen lamp, filtering out the UV and much of the infrared from the lamp. So that's the product that was used. And here is an analysis of the cost comparison. The LED did indeed cost a little bit more than the halogen because the beams didn't need a lot of accessories in these fixtures. The cost was not dramatically higher than the halogen. And you can see the difference in the annual electric operating cost dropped to less than half, obviously. And judging at that time, it was a little over 2.5 years ago, we assumed that the LEDs were going to last 50,000 hours, and that meant that the LED was going to last 17 years at the rate at which it was being used, the number of hours per year. And the payback was about 3 years, including HVAC savings. It came to about 2 years. That's pretty doggone impressive. Next installation we did was in Eugene, Oregon, at the University of Oregon's museum, the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art. And it was an exhibit of Chris Jordan works. These are works that are computer-generated art. And computer-generated is the wrong term, but you know what I mean, using computer programs to produce artwork. And these artworks are large murals, essentially, and they illustrate the waste in contemporary American culture. So they're fascinating to look at, very clever pieces. So, for example, you all recognize the Afternoon at the Grand Jatte by Seurat, except this is done in bottle caps. So each one of those bottle caps depicts the average number of plastic bottles consumed in the United States every friggin' minute. So those of you who had a bottle of water at the break, you can start feeling guilty now. Okay, here's the lamp that was used in that particular exhibit. I apologize for the SPD, but you can, those of you who speak in nanometers can see there's that little bit of a blue hump, and then this particular lamp has both a phosphored blue LED and a red LED in it, which augments the red end of the spectrum and simulates incandescent very closely. So here's the final installation. The original installation would, with their standard lamp, 90 watt, lamp would have drawn 3,871 watts. You can see it dropped to 14% of that number with the LED. And if you look at the analysis here, this particular lamp is very costly. At the time, it was $108 a piece. So compared to the halogen lamp, which was in the neighborhood of $8 a piece, big cost difference. So it cost a lot more. But when you analyze the energy use, you end up with a payback of, gosh, 9 years? Whoa, that's a long time. Then you realize the Jordan Schnitzer of art is paying 6 cents a kilowatt hour. How many of you out there in your facilities are paying 6 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity, melted rate? Almost none of you. What I want to point out is, yes, it saved a ton of energy. Look, it's only $84 per year instead of $591 for that one gallery. But the payback is slow because of the electrical rate in that particular part of the country. We also were using 50,000 hours life on that particular lamp. Interestingly enough, we had a side exhibit of 4 clusters of art that were very similar, chosen by the curators, and illustrated or lighted with 4 different lamp types, including the incumbent lamp, which is this lamp over here, and 3 LED PAR 38 replacement lamps. This one is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one. We asked all of the museum staff to come in and fill out surveys without knowing which lamp was which, about which appearances they preferred. Overall light distribution, the warmth and coolness on the art, best lamp for oil painting, best lamp for black and white photos, and the museum staff all selected this particular lamp as the one they preferred. This is the one that produced the closest color to their standard incandescent halogen lamp. And then we brought in the public. And they didn't know LED from halogen. They didn't have a clue. So when they looked at these 2, or at the 4 clusters of art, we ended up with a very different result. So the museum staff preferred these. The viewing public preferred this lamp. It was very unusual. It was a little bit cooler, just a little bit pinker. They preferred it for viewing the color of the objects and for a little bit of crispness that it gave the black and white photos. So what this may show us is that the museum people who are used to seeing this art under a particular light source are looking for an LED that completely mimics that original halogen lamp. But the viewing public, who isn't as used to that, may be more open to a slightly different color balance in their lighting for museums. Now, this is the Getty Museum. We also did a gateway study here. This was a exhibit of photographs taken between about 1850 and 1890 in the Holy Land. And they are primarily albumin prints, very light sensitive, very, very light sensitive. So Jim Druzik worked closely with the curators of this exhibit to make sure that the light levels were no higher than 30 lux, although I think it was as high as 50 lux on one of the objects. So very low light levels, very low ambient light levels, and there was care taken to ramp down people's adaptation, lightness or brightness adaptation before they got into the room so that they could still see details in the photographs even under very low light levels. Here is the energy comparison using their standard 60-watt PAR 38 halogen lamp. It would have been 2,000 watts. The LED switched that down to 347 watts. Again, a huge savings, 83% savings. Here's that same SPD, And when you look at the summary here, notice that we were a little bit less optimistic. We had backed down to about 25,000 hours of life expected for the lamp, which changed the economics a little bit. The payback at 12 cents a kilowatt hour melded rate there in Southern California was 2.3 years, and including HVAC savings, which they certainly had to consider in Los Angeles, 2.1 years. So that was a very impressive payback in that museum, and they are continuing to use LEDs more and more in the galleries. And then, of course, this is Scott Rosenfeld's galleries. This is the Rose Gallery where the first work was done. I won't go into detail here. You've seen that he was able to experiment with a variety of different LED products and get very similar results between the original halogen and the LED replacements. Here's information about the lamps that were used in that particular gallery, their CRIs and their color temperatures and the wattages. This is a summary of the lamps and the wattages that were used. You can find this online at the DOE website on the Gateway program and just download the full report if you want the complete, deadly boring details. But here's the summary. We have a lot more cost for LED lamps compared to halogen, but they have very long hours of operation here, about 4,500 a year in the Smithsonian. The power is much reduced compared to the halogen. The electrical cost for that one gallery alone per year is $816 compared to almost $3,000 before that. Amazing savings. And the payback at 14 cents a kilowatt hour melded rate is 1.4 years. Now, again, we use 25,000 hours of estimated life on this particular product. He also mentioned the problem of the Luce Gallery, where we could not switch over to LEDs because the MR16 lamps were not compatible with the electronic transformer in the track fixture and not compatible in conjunction with the dimming system that was on the particular lighting system. So there are a lot of compatibility issues out there, especially when you're talking about the small MR16 lamps. Flicker is one issue, color, or even some lamps don't operate at all on electronic transformers. So we're still dealing with that complication. So the question comes, should we be looking at dedicated LED luminaires or should we be looking at replacement lamps? And the answer is, it depends. First, you have to look at the efficacy and the watts of the delivered light. Now, if you're looking at a high wattage product, well, high wattage meaning for an LED, maybe a 20-watt fixture or lamp, you have to understand that if you're putting in a lot of screens in order to reduce the light output and baffling the dickens out of it, in order to get the light levels down to an appropriate light level for the art, you're throwing away a lot of light. So if you can match the light source and the wattage and the beam spread to the artwork you're lighting by going to a lower wattage LED product, that can end up saving you a lot of money in the long run. And that's something you have to balance compared to whether the dedicated LED product can be reduced in wattage either through dimming or through using lower wattage LED modules. You have to look at the color qualities between the two technologies. You have to look at the cost, whether you're buying new dedicated LED fixtures or whether you're using your existing stock. In the case of the Smithsonian, Scott Rosenfeld has something akin to 10,000 light fixtures sitting around. He couldn't exactly replace all of those. So a retrofit lamp was really appropriate, especially when he was starting out trying new technologies in the galleries. Beam qualities between dedicated products and retrofit products, there's lots of variety there. Interchangeability of products, the dedicated LEDs do not have as much interchangeability at this point in time. We're hoping that's going to change soon. And I know there's some luminaire manufacturers in the audience. This is a message we need to get across. We need interchangeability, especially for the museum industry. Flicker is a big problem. Flicker is not noticeable to about 90% of the population, but the rest of the 10% of the population is driven nuts by it. So the question is, do we just design for 90% of the population, or do we worry about flicker? And are we aware of the fact that flicker can be an issue for autistic kids, for example? It can be an issue for people who get migraines or headaches. We really don't know what to do, but we think that probably getting rid of flicker is a really good goal in a lot of applications. Compatibility with existing track and compatibility with dimming systems. Those are two big hurdles that the LED industry needs to get through. So the next question is, if we were to go to LED products that were dedicated, are we getting better thermal management? Are we guaranteed of getting longer life out of the LEDs? Are we guaranteed of not getting dramatic color shift out of the LEDs? Maybe. We think so. We're hoping so. When you are evaluating whether to use LEDs, dedicated or not, here are some rules of thumb that will guide you in where you should be locating these LEDs first. Remember that if you're comparing to halogen, you can reduce the energy load by 75%, and you get those additional air conditioning savings in some museums, but not all. You need to talk to your HVAC experts. The payback will be less than 4 years if your lights are on 8 hours a day or more. If the cost of relamping labor is high, and in general that means $25 or more. So if you've got tall ceilings that you're maintaining, that costs a lot of money to either get somebody on a ladder or in a lift to get up there to change light bulbs. If your power cost is high, the average power cost in the United States is between 10 and 11 cents a kilowatt hour. If it's above 13 cents a kilowatt hour, you should be thinking about LEDs. If the cost of the LED replacement lamp is less than $60, and if the usable LED life is 25,000 hours or more, then all of those work together, you will get a payback of less than 4 years. Now, you have to do your own analysis. When I learned that Scott was having problems with color shift with many of the lamps that he was using, I got very nervous and I went back to these calculations and I reran the life cycle cost calculation on the assumption that LEDs are going to last 5,000 hours and then they turn weird colors and they need to be removed from the gallery. What's the payback? And the answer is they won't pay back in less than 10 years. So what this says is the LED industry is working to fix this problem. The LED industry is aware of this problem, and if they weren't yesterday, they will be as of today, that there are color issues with LEDs in some products. And I have confidence that the LED industry will fix the problems. When you are evaluating whether to use LEDs, be sure to examine life cycle cost, not just looking at the initial cost, because the initial cost will blow you away. Houston, we have a problem. We have this color problem. So the question is, what causes color shift? Is it the LED itself? Is it the phosphors? Is it the optics? Sometimes we've noticed in some shifting lamps that there's plastic on the front of the LEDs for optical reasons or protective reasons. Some of that plastic is actually shifting towards yellow. How much is that contributing towards the change in the color? How much is due to bad thermal conditions when you take an LED and you put it inside of a existing fixture? Are all makes and models equally affected? We don't know. Are dedicated LED products any better? Maybe. Can a track head be better designed for a retrofit LED lamp? We think so. Maybe that makes sense. How long is useful color life? We don't have firm answers. But all of these questions will affect your life cycle cost analysis. So to get good results, here's the advice. See them before you specify them. Do not order them out of the catalog. And whatever you do, don't just respond to an advertisement that came into your email. Require good quality testing. That's called LM79 testing. Details later. Be sure to evaluate a lot of different features of these lamps. Check Department of Energy available websites for test data. If you can, use them on non-dimming circuits. If you have dimming circuits, you've got some additional homework that needs to be done. Specify products from companies that you know or whom you trust or that have a documented support history, because these people who are selling you the products need to stand with you and help you if there are any problems down the road. I would not recommend relamping an entire museum with the same product. Diversity is important. Do a little bit at a time. Use different products, try them out, see which ones work better for you, and eventually when you're through testing these, the LED industry will be better. Proceed slowly but steadily and do it. You have to get experience with these. This is the location of the Department of Energy website that has these case studies. Thank you very much.